Hello and welcome back to the Digital Marketing Podcast brought to you by targetinternet.com. My name is Kieran Rogers,
And I'm Daniel Rolls.
and today we have a tips and tools episode for you.
Well, it has been a while
It
since
has
we've
been
done
a
one of
while.
these.
We always say that.
Yeah. And then we did lots and lots, then we did none, and it's okay. That we thought we'd revisit because, and there is a theme tied in, woven into this stuff, a few random things, but a few things, the direction of travel with search and generative engines and large language models and all those things. But don't despair because we keep talking about this stuff, but there's some fun little things in here as well. Let's kind of start with Google AI Max, because that tells us the direction of things a little bit. We'll chat around that, and then we'll jump into some different tools as well. So Google AI Max is something, it's been in beta for a while, and they've rolled it out. So I think it was in May that they announced it, and they've now rolled it out to pretty much everyone. And what you'll find is if you go into Google Ads, you've got, you set your objectives. I want sales or lead generation, whatever it is. And based on those objectives, they will give you a number of different campaign types. But you end up with, you've got Performance Max, which is basically paid search, display, YouTube, Gmail, everything kind of rolled into one. But you can still go in and do search, as in paid search, text ads. But now when you go in, they're offering us this AI Max option. So Kieran, why don't you start explaining what AI Max is? Because you've been in the loop with this for a while.
Yeah, I was really lucky. The guys at Google invited me and my account manager up to Google. So we went up to London and Google, thank you. You put on an excellent show. My only criticism is your coffee that you serve us is terrible. You can't put coffee in there and leave it there for 7 hours and expect it to be nice. Let's not leave a bad taste in people's mouths.
2 hours later.
Anyway, aside from that, yeah, the event was excellent and I learned a ton of stuff. But one of the things they were really keen to point out to people, look, a lot of people have got the wrong idea about Google AI Max because they think it's a whole new bidding strategy. It's not. It's actually really intrinsically tied to your search campaigns. Right, so it's kind of new functionality for search ads. And I think one of the key things I got from my Google account manager was very much that everybody's doing the same thing. Like, we're all rushing to test this. Or let's get a separate budget. Let's test it out. Let's see how it works. Let's learn it. And actually, in this instance, that's maybe not necessarily the best way of doing this or rolling this out. Because actually, being search, it relies on like lots of signals and lots of data from your account. So if you set up something completely separate, you're sort of slightly on a back foot if you go down that route. So what is it? Well, they made a big thing at how it very cleverly uses a lot of keywordless signals that they have within their data set. So, when you start to unpack this and think about the revolution that's going on before our very eyes, like, guys, we're seeing history happen right here. There's some really big changes been made this year that are going to have a knock-on effect in a big way to everything we do, not just in marketing, but in the real world, full stop. And the big shift has been, the introduction of, first of all, AI summaries, and then AI chat functionality actually within the Google interface. And what Google is saying is they've seen a huge surge in like the number of searches that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. That's massively grown, but also the length of them. And also some radical shifts in how people are interacting. So actually now, because people are a lot more used to like dealing with AI and having back and forth conversations, rather than just picking 2 or 3 words and doing their search, they're seeing searches grow to like 8 to 12 words.
And it's the context piece that's really interesting to me, because the signals they're talking about, the more you read into it, is that it's about the sequence of things that you maybe have searched for previously.
Yes.
And where you might end up.
Absolutely. So a lot of their like Performance Max, for example, started the ball rolling on this. So, that was able to look at a lot of context across a lot of different Google properties at lots of different stages of the funnel, right? To like get a picture of, well, from what we know about the people using Google and what does the data say about who's interested in what, and who might be enticed into something completely new that they haven't perhaps thought of before. So, it was it was the first time we'd ever had, one campaign type that could do like full funnel stuff.
Right.
And anybody that's, seriously pursued this has, realized fantastic gains from it. It's brilliant. It gets harder as everybody jumps on that bandwagon because suddenly, you don't have that competitive edge. Your competitors weren't using it. I think probably pretty much everybody's probably using Performance Max now. Some better than others, has to be said. But the thing with this is there's a whole bunch of new signals I think Google have now got. So, people, as we know, for a lot of searches, particularly if there's like an AI answer, like additional summary boxes, a lot of publishers have seen a massive drop in the number of organic clicks that they've been getting. And Daniel, you were saying even at Target Internet, we've seen some big shifts, like big improvements in like impression rates for sure. But the problem is,
it's interesting.
No one's scrolling down to where the organic listings are because they're getting the answer up top.
Yeah, so just to give people some context, within Search Console, you can see how many search impressions you got, and you can see how many clicks that you've got. And our impressions are at an all-time high. We continue to publish content. We continue to optimize it, where our rankings are getting better all the time. But actually, our number of clicks is not an all-time low at all because we've been going up gradually over the years. But it has dipped in the last 6 to 12 months. And that percentage ratio between them is dipped. And you're absolutely right. It's because there are ads at the top of the page. There's AI overviews top of the page. There's all those different results. Like we're seeing Reddit show up more. We're seeing more videos show up because they seem to be more human-based.
Yeah.
So we're just not getting the clicks in the same way.
You see, Google aren't getting the clicks in the same way either. Right. So that creates a problem. So previously they would have been able to see, who's clicking on which organic links, and that, for their system, that might put you in the running for certain ads, right? That would make sense. Now they're not getting that data either, but what they are getting is a ton of data on who's asking AI what, who's looking at which AI summaries, who's dwelling on a particular summary, and then what's the follow-on question.
Right,
and when
that's
you've got
the bit
AI, you can use AI to string together lots and lots of signals like that for every single individual and produce what I'm assuming is what they're referring to by the keywordless signals.
Right. And I think that's the whole thing, is that you might show up, you get really good results with 4 or 5 search terms. You're not getting a click, but you might get a 6th search because it's a sequence of kind of deduction that people are going through to some extent. So it's really interesting.
Well, it's even more than that in a way when you think about it, because actually somebody might just be researching, I don't know, they might be researching baby names, for example.
Right.
And that combined with lots of other behavior, what videos are they watching on YouTube? What comments are they making in the comment section? All these things are also, what emails are they getting from who on Gmail? If you've got the right, given the right permissions, it's able to use that. If you've got Chrome, what other websites are they looking? It's all being fed into the mix. And actually, when you start to join the dots for a whole bunch of different signals in this way, and you start to train your AI to make use of this, of course, there's a ton of value that you can extract for that in terms of, who would be receptive to which kind of advertisers and what kind of message. I think it's mind-blowingly complex. That's the first thing I would say. This is increasingly, I find it very difficult to get my head around, okay, how do you unpick this? How's this actually working? But in a way, you don't need to, right?
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say, because increasingly you've got a couple of, there's 3 kind of main slider buttons. And it's you slide 1 to say, expand my keywords to keyword list signals and things like that. And then you talk about creative assets. Yes, you can create new creative assets. And then it goes through and says, and actually, can we use different landing pages? We're going to select the most appropriate landing page. Now, my terror with that is historical, which is looking at expansive word campaigns, where basically what would happen is that it would start, fine, you're going to rank well for this keyword, and I'm going to send you through to this landing page. And the reality is I'm already ranking for that organically, and it's not a term that's going to convert at a high rate. Actually, these campaigns are only optimized for achieving your desired outcome.
Yeah.
So they're not going to do the things it used to do when it was a little more basic, from my insight so far.
They've also put a lot more control in than we had initially when Performance Max was released. So, for example, you do have the ability of turning off let Google decide what landing pages it uses. This is the challenge here, right? For years, everybody's been optimizing all of their websites and content for the same 2 to 3 word phrases. And now suddenly genie's out of the bottle and no one's using those 2-3 word searches in the same way anymore. Like, for sure, they're still using them, but a lot of people are, skipping a whole section of the discovery phase that they would previously have done within search and through clicking on your organic links and stuff. And now they're just jumping straight to the answer. And so we're moving from a situation where there was space for, 3 or 4 ads and, half a dozen organic links, to a place where, frankly, that's not the case anymore. And they're still there, but no one's clicking them. Like, it reminded me, I was chatting to somebody about it today. It reminds me of remember back in, probably go back to 2011, 2012, when Google had a whole bunch of not so hot ads down the right-hand side?
And down the bottom as well.
Like 15, and at the bottom of the page, like 15, like thin, skinny column of 15 blue links. And it was funny. It was reserved for the ads that weren't really quite as relevant, but we'll show them anyway.
Give
Because
them a
it
go.
gives the advertiser, just give them a chance. And they were terribly low quality, and nobody got very good results from them. And there was outrage when people removed them, because people thought, well, now I'm squeezed into fighting for, top 3 position. Well, yeah, but actually, when we looked at the data, everyone ignored the long, thin, skinny column because it was terrible. Like, it wasn't really very targeted. And like, this is similar in a way, right? We're now moving to a place where, like, just one thing is going to get the edge, and maybe a few things might get sort of sub-mentions if you look at the sources. But actually, yeah, the game has changed massively. And what I'm excited about is AI Max, I think, gives us quite early on tools to start chewing into that. That's the exciting thing. I think also, though, with that, undoubtedly, we've lost a huge amount of perceived control that we had perhaps once had over our organic listings. Like, I think people have been asking me, what can we do to rescue our organic position? I'm like, well, winging a prayer, but nothing really. Because
we'll talk about that more in a moment.
We'll
talk about that organic piece bit in a moment, because it's going to come up a load in a few more of the tools we talk about as well. Before we get into some of that heavier stuff, let's go to a fun tool for a moment. This is when you pointed out to me, this is something in Google Labs. So if you're not familiar, it's labs.google. And it's just called GenType. Well, again, as ever, everything's in the show notes, targetinternet.com/podcast. So, but are you explaining, because you showed this to me, and I thought it's actually a lot of fun, and it's quite useful as well.
So you can create a full-on like graphical alphabet,
a font set.
Yeah, a font set, just by giving it a prompt. Right. So I got hold of this and I did something fairly pedestrian and mundane. I thought, that's quite fun. I handed it to my 15-year-old daughter, Izzy, and said, look at this. And she was like, OMG. The first thing she did was she instructed it to create an alphabet made up of vomiting unicorns, but they had to vomit rainbows. I'm like, wow.
It's a thing of beauty.
I'm waiting for it to produce this thing, and it's never going to cope with that. And
this is going in the show notes for sure as well.
Yeah, it totally did it.
But I think the key thing is it's a nice little use case of generative AI creating images, but doing something that's kind of fun with it as well. Yeah. And actually, there's loads of useful cases for it as well. But it is a bit of fun. But there's some nice stuff in Google Labs that you can experiment with and go, actually, I could see how it's going to be applied as well. So that's GenType. Take a look at that. Right, let's move on. LLM Refs is one of the many tools that are appearing to try and help you with search engine optimization, but from the generative engine side of things. So the idea of how do you show up in the AI overviews? How do you show up in ChatGPT and so on? The nice thing about LLM Refs is they have a very robust and solid free trial. Yeah. And Kieran pointed this out to me. We've been playing around with it a fair bit. And rather than doing what HubSpot AI Grader does, which is HubSpot AI Grader, you put your brand in and it tells you how visible your brand is, it thinks, in a number of different large language models. This, you put a search term in and it tells you the brands that are doing well, and it shows you how they're kind of branded. It gives you some scores around those kind of things as well. So as with any of these tools, I think there's two main issues. One, it starts to make you realize how complicated really unpicking this generative engine optimization piece is, how you show up in a large language model, how many things there are to think about. And we'll come to that point in a moment, because Kieran was talking to me about that. But also, where's the testing to prove this? Where's the data to back this up? Where is the definitive case? Oh, this is what it is now. It's going to be fixed like this for a period of time. I think there's a lot of people just testing, trying, experimenting, coming up with tools. This is a great example of a tool, but I don't think there is a definitive answer to these questions yet. So that's part of the game. It always has been. SEO is trying to understand it and game it and get there before other people and so on as well. Yeah. But it is complicated. And I think that actually search has been more complicated than people have realized for a while, because a lot of this stuff was going on in the background with the Google algorithm, but they started to bring AI into the Google algorithm anyway. So really, this idea of understanding SEO, generative engine optimization, if it's the same thing or something separate, has actually got wildly more complicated. And there's just so much more to do that it becomes slightly overwhelming. And therefore, you're going to need help with this.
It's every time this iterates, it becomes exponentially more complicated. right? So what do I mean by that? Well, let's just go on a journey through time, shall we? Like back in the day, there was Google and there was one like search index. And then a few years later, we had, mobile search results were sometimes slightly different. So that complicated things. And then there was this massive revolution that sort of happened silently where actually there was no such thing as being number one in Google. You had to ask number one for who, and then number one for who and where and on what device.
Right.
And in what context. Right.
Yeah.
So each time this happens, you're massively adding to the number of variables. And it's led to like a running joke, actually. I was at this year's Brighton SEO. The running joke was, when you ask an SEO any question, they say, the answer is always, well, it's complicated.
Right.
It's because it is. And it's getting more complicated by the day. So this is the thing I think I'm really quite sick of hearing senior marketers, marketing directors, who you are. You'll recognize the people that have wound me up. You'll know who I'm having a go at, right? Like they go off, they look at some webinar that's shoved at them for free on LinkedIn, and they come back thinking they've got all the answers because they've found this expert who thinks that, this is really, and they announce to their team that we need to get on top of AI search. And like, just because they've identified that there's an issue there, they've solved it. They've staked the ground and they now own this, right? And it's just really annoying. So if you're caught in these headlights right now, I'm sure a lot of you are, actually the llmrefs.com demo will help you to explain to these senior serial summarizers, we'll call them. That's what they do. They're like, blatantly.
I like the serial summarizers.
Yeah, they're blatantly simplifying ridiculously complicated things, right? Because you can show them with this. Actually, using the free version, let's just run the numbers on one key phrase. Like pick one really popular key phrase. And what it'll do is it'll ping out how like the top like 30 like references in not just one, but like almost a dozen different large language learning models. And
it's Perplexity and Claude and ChatGPT.
There's a little top right-hand drop down you want to look at, right? Because I hadn't spotted it initially. You sort of miss it in the interface. But actually you can choose the results that you're getting. Like, well, what do you want to look at? Do you want to look at Claude or ChatGPT, or do you want to look at, Gemini AI or Google Answers, or, what element do you want to include within this summary? And it calculates it all up for you. And it is just mind-boggling. And that's just for one phrase. This is something we've gone from like one source to like almost a dozen just in one foul leap. And the dust really hasn't settled on which of these are going to be most influential. No one knows which is going to be the most influential large language learning model in any one space this time next year, or even at Christmas this year. No one really knows where that's going to go or how that's going to roll out. Remember, there's a massive arms race going on with the functionality that's available to various different people at the moment. So for that reason, I think LLRefs deserves a very cool mention. You get a ton of value out of it if you
the free one, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, but if you subscribe, you can do a lot more. Like it is very much locked down, but I think just looking at that demo, it's so easy to access. You just connect it to a Google account and away you go. Yeah.
They've upset me with one thing though.
Oh, they did upset you, didn't they?
Yeah, quite drastically. So on one of their kind of blog type pages, and we're just having a little browse around as we do, make sure we kind of think the tool's okay. And the headline said, and I'm not going to go into this because I'm going to get dragged down a rabbit hole and I don't want to. It said, meta descriptions are the new H1.
Oh.
And I then lost the will to live.
Did that upset you, Daniel?
Just because this idea, how long I reckon I spent 8 years telling people meta descriptions had no impact on Google, right? Other than it would show up and it might get a higher click-through rate, but it wasn't directly impacting the algorithm. And I remember repeating things, and then is that the same as meta keywords? And I was like, no, that's a different thing completely. But your H1's really important. And now we're saying things like this is the same as this. To what your point was earlier on, like someone will hear something at a conference, and go, that's the gospel, right? And it is that a little knowledge has always been a dangerous thing. Yeah. I work in lots of organizations, worked in academia a lot, to big universities, and invariably a professor would come back and go, why aren't we ranking for this search term? And it would just be, because it's not relevant, because it's just not in the user journey. And it was just one of those kind of classic moments.
Well, my favorite, because according to Google, only 30 people a month search for that. Like, that's
right, exactly. It's like no one's searching for it. So we're getting 10,000 visits a month on that search term. So I'm not sure that's true. But yeah, anyway, let's move swiftly on. LLM refs, if you're listening, you can redeem yourself by leaving us a comment of what you were saying with that, and we will get into it. Right. Actually, on this, I thought this was quite interesting. Google have published some advice, AI experience advice. And it's like you get the lovely Google documentation that says, this is how search works and this is what you should do. And it gives you the really kind of straightforward stuff. They've actually written some really nice stuff about succeeding in AI search. And it talks about those fundamentals of, the good quality content, understanding user intent, knowledge graph, connections between things. So we'll put the link into the show notes because it's developer.google.com, understand their search section. But this is something you highlighted for me. And it's not to say this is a completely robust tool, but it did get me thinking on the lines of actually search has been more complicated than we've realized for a while, which was the knowledge graph explorer. So let's take a step back. The knowledge graph is the idea that Google works on entities. That is the connections between different things. It will know that Target Internet is a company. It will know the Digital Marketing Podcast is a podcast. Kieran's a person. Daniel's a person. And it will kind of know the connections between those things. And that's how it's working out to some extent. Connections, the kind of semantic connections, the context, but also the validity and the kind of authenticity and authority of those things as well. So it's a very interesting kind of piece. But the knowledge graph explorer, this thing, you can put something in and it will tell you the things it's connected to. Now, it's reasonably limited, but it does show you that you can kind of play around with this knowledge graph a little bit. It was interesting that I put the company name in and all it came up with was my name and our managing director's name. And then when it had lots and lots of different Daniel Roleses. So I clicked through to some of those. Some were me as an author, others were me as a movie star. I was quite interested in.
You apparently were a movie star in a black and white movie back in the 1930s.
I've aged very well, I'd like to say. Yeah. So it's very imperfect, but what it does get you thinking about is that connection between things is really important. And that's what these large language models, and that's what Google are trying to work out, is authority and authenticity and all those things that you've got in experience, expertise and trust and so on. So really, all we're getting to is SEO is dead again. I'm sorry to go down this path again, but it's just like the more complex it gets, the less I'm going to think about it because it's just a bit overwhelming.
It is overwhelming, but I think what was really interesting about that example you just gave was that clearly it had got it wrong. And this is what you all need to be doing, is looking at tools like this and going, well, what has this got wrong about us, our organization?
That's exactly it.
And so I've been using this and working out, well, why doesn't it know that we're a member of, this big important thing that we're a member of?
Yeah.
Oh, because actually we haven't made it obvious on our website. Like we've maybe we've linked to, just the organization's logo, but we haven't put the hyperlink in there, or, little things like what's on our about page. Do we mention it there? Like you need to make this stuff really clear, and then the AI will trip over it and go, okay, I understand the context. Like it's smart, but it's not clairvoyant, right? You have to create the links. You have to create.
That's when it's smart, but it's not clairvoyant. I like that. I think that it just ends up basically being so complicated because saying what shows up in organic search, what shows up in these different LLMs, what's being referenced in each of those LLM results, what are the AI over, and you kind of get, this is a bit overwhelming. And actually, these fundamental building blocks of understanding user intent, doing your structured schema markup, and actually we will do an episode entirely on this because I think it's such an important topic. So we'll do something on that. So actually within the code saying, this is an article, this is an FAQ, those kind of things as well. Just making connections between things because the knowledge graph and so on, all of this is building up that overarching picture as well. Advocacy, really important. People saying nice things, leaving reviews, all those kind of things as well. So I do think, yes, there are new tools. It's changing very rapidly, but still coming back to some of those fundamentals. Right, another one. Somebody that did get in contact, because we're going to give the opportunity to get in contact at the moment, but somebody that did get in contact was AdZoomer. And what AdZoomer allows you to do is to connect up all of your ad platforms into one place and manage them from one place, wherever you're an individual organization or an agency as well.
I've used AdZoomer. It's good.
So it's a great tool.
It's a great tool. It does a lot of stuff. Like it looks around a lot of corners for you. And I like the fact that it, like all of your ad platforms, it covers a lot of them. So yeah, check it out. It's good.
Yeah, it brings it into one place, and it will also Google ads, LinkedIn ads, but also it will bring in your Google Analytics and those kind of things as well. And they've given us a discount code as well. So if you want to take a look at it, there is a free trial, but if you do sign up, you're going to discount targetinternet.com/podcast.
I've got an extra tool I want to squeeze in because I got very excited about this. I've only just started playing around with it, but it's a tool by Google and it's called Notebook LM.
I mentioned this a few times, but I was going to say, I don't think you'd play with it very much.
No, I've been playing around with it a bit more.
It's fantastic.
What I love about it is you can upload your own data into it,
Yeah.
and then it becomes a language model just purely focused on what you've given it. And I think that's massively exciting.
One example of this, I was playing this the other day and I went through and uploaded 5 podcasts. It will transcribe them for you and then you can query them as a whole. I was trying to understand how much we'd mentioned SEO, GEO, LLMs and all those kind of things. But what was lovely is it will create a mind map.
Yeah.
And actually in the last couple of podcasts, I've included the mind maps that it's generated back of it as well. Just to give people get an idea of what we're about to play with it. It's brilliant.
It's just got so much potential. There's so
For
many
learning,
clever
I think
ways
it's
that you can do
amazing.
this. Well, it's got me thinking is maybe that's where we need to go with the complexity that we're facing.
Well, we were talking about this in an organisation I was in the other day about trusted sources. And actually, you can do this already with a decent prompt, which you say, get me the latest digital marketing news, but only from, well, how about you could create a version of Google or a large language model that just looked at the websites that you trusted and just said, I don't want to get it from everywhere. I just want to look at these places. Now, it might limit your viewpoint. You'll be really careful of the echo chamber type thing. That makes that even worse. Actually, this is kind of where it's going. If you look at ChatGPT and Gemini, the fact they have connectors that allows you to connect your internal tools and things like that is definitely the direction of travel as well. And we will get into that whole agents piece again in future kind of episodes as well. I want to give a shout to one more tool, which we'll put into the show notes before we finish up. And it's one that we've spoken about before, but our friends over at Nutshell. So if you're not familiar, Nutshell is a CRM system, but it was basically a bit of an outlier originally. It had a very specific use case and it's grown. And what they really pride themselves in is the robustness of the tool. And it is an absolutely excellent tool. But actually, from a pricing point of view, it's much lower cost than a lot of the other CRMs that are out there. And it's very transparent on its pricing in terms of you did this package and then you've got 20,000 contacts, right? Here's your price. So I really do recommend it. But they have given us a discount code, so 15% off when you sign up. If you are looking at CRMs, take a look at it. And we are doing a big comparison of CRMs coming up as well. And Nutshell is coming out very well in our comparisons at the moment. If you have got a tool we haven't spoken about, please do submit it. We do take a look at them. And thank you, as ever, for listening to the Digital Marketing Podcast. For more episodes, resources, to leave a review, or to get in contact, go to targetinternet.com/podcast.